in a newsletter that we received, a mission newsletter, Elder Wilson said that someone was needed in Malawi, and that my husband could do that kind of work, architect work, because the president of Malawi wanted to move the capital from Blantyre to Lilongwe, and they needed someone to draw up the plans, an architect or an engineer of some kind, and my husband had those qualifications. We served there a whole year and a half, 2 years. I'm thinking it was Taiwan. No, in Malawi, about a year. And Malawi was a very, very interesting place because it's landlocked, and they don't have any oil or good ground resources. But the president used to say, but we have people, and the people are our reserve. At first, it was a new adventure. But my husband took me to a lot of new adventures, so this was not new. But he had an enjoyable time working there. Then also we were down in the West Indies, and how that happened, we had our children were going to school at PUC, and Chris bought a house, and then a man by the name of Fleary from the island of Saint Vincent lived in our house, and he and my husband got to talking. Well, it turned out that my husband had a degree, a certificate for his high school teacher. So he says, why don't you take my place down in St. Vincent? My husband says, how do we do it? Because we were free. We didn't have any other obligations at that time. The children were big enough so that they could take care of themselves. And so now that was an interesting place because it's an island, and anthropologically there's the first slaves were brought over from Africa, and probably from Malawi too. Slaves were brought to do the plantation work there. Both Malawi and St. Vincent were very primitive places. We had to deal with a lot of primitive health care things, and schooling and the whole thing. I taught English as a second language. I was willing to go and help whatever needed to be done. And that was a lot of fun because I got to know different people. In Malawi, it was interesting because the boys in the compound had the sons of other people there. They got acquainted with a little monkey, a little wild monkey. And here was this, they would feed it, and of course I loved animals. And they would feed the little monkey, and he would run back and forth. Interesting enough about that was that when they fed him white bread, he wouldn't eat it. But whole wheat bread, he ate that quickly. I don't recall them naming the monkey. He used to play with the birds. I saw him on top of a building running. A big black crow was running back and forth, and the monkey, I don't know who was chasing who, but anyway, they were having a fun playtime. And he played with the dogs that way, and I enjoyed that little monkey. We were called to serve in Taiwan 2 years and whatever else they'd need, because they needed someone to be quality control. The Chinese are very good workers, and they do all kinds of things, but they'll slip in some bad cement or whatever they can to get by with it. So my husband had to watch and be out there early in the morning to see that the cement was right, everything was in good standards. Now I want to tell you that we had been going to what was called Mission Forum meetings in Loma Linda twice a month for a long time, and those meetings told us all the things we'd meet. The people who came and talked to us in those forum meetings told us the different problems that the missionaries had. So they said, the first thing you do is learn the language. And I went out, I thought, how will I learn Chinese? So I looked outside, and here was a young couple, a Chinese couple, walking up the street, and I went and I said, pardon me, please, can you tell me how to say, how are you, or hello, in Chinese? And they said, ni hao ma. Well, that's not hard to learn. Ni is here. Hao has a meaning of how, and then ma is question mark. So I memorized that first sentence, and then when we got to Taiwan, I took Chinese classes, and that I enjoyed really. I had 2 teachers, one each an hour, and when you have 2 teachers of any language, and it's terribly important that you learn the language and you learn the thought patterns and all those things. And so I really enjoyed, because of the German that I had known, the different kinds of German that I had known in my lifetime. I was able to hook a new word somewhere and then remember it. And the Adventist church there is very much like ours, like the American Adventist churches are. They had beautiful choir, beautiful speakers, good thoughts, lots of workers. I'd had a great uncle, a cousin, who worked there. Marvin Lowen worked in the Orient, in that area. Culturally, and so far as food is concerned, we didn't have much problem because we loved all the vegetarian mushroom dishes and all the vegetable dishes and all they are very conscious of that, of the health aspect of this new set of happenings that's happening there. And in fact, Microsoft was building a new building on the corner of the lot, and our new hospital was right next door to it. So we had a good time watching the different kinds of methods of foundation and stability and standards, yes. I was just walking out from the compound in Taiwan behind the hospital, and a man who lived not far away said, "You know, you have some very bad boys on this compound." I said, "Oh, what happened?" I was giving out some Christian literature, and there were Christians there. I was giving out some Christian literature, and they just took it and threw it in the ditch. I said, "Oh my, but why don't you come to our house on Friday night? We have Bible study, and we learn English." Okay, so about the second week that he came to our Bible study, he said, "I have a friend, his name is David Lin, and he wants to improve his English. So we did. I did. He too was a Christian. And he and I finally decided that we'd do it on Friday morning. Early in the morning, we'd get up, and he improved it. And while he was talking, he said, "Can I tell you a story?" Because he wanted to improve his conversation. Well, he said, "I had to go to Seattle for a banking business." He was a head banker. And he said, the question that came up was, why was it that Taiwan, of the 4 little dragon countries, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong, and he said, they asked, how much money is left over from what the United States gave them after World War II to build up their economy? And they said, he said, well, I think it's because all those countries invested in big businesses, car manufacturing, box manufacturing, whatever manufacturing they could. But in Taiwan, they invested in the little person. The little lady who had a cart and wanted to sell tofu and noodles and stuff on the street. He said that the little person was more quick to pay back a loan than was the older person. That a big company. Big companies were not good. So Taiwan had a lot of excess American money. We were there in Taiwan 2 years and 3 months because that's the amount of time they anticipated would take to build a new hospital that they needed to build. And it needed to be of good quality. So he was called a quality control person.